Do they probably need to move up market considering what's going on with luxury goods? We are back. You are chatting with John P. Today, we are going to be talking about the Omega Speedmaster 321 recently announced. That's going to be coming out in stainless steel. If you're familiar with the watch, it's basically a recreation of an old watch that existed once upon a time and obviously still exists out there today, though in the vintage category. But Omega is bringing this watch back, or somewhat of their modern take on it. I am going to be the Omega fanboy because I do actually enjoy Omega a whole lot. As you can see by my wrist today, I have my Omega Seamaster ceramic bezel, previous generation with the flat dial. I actually love this thing a whole lot. So I'm going to be the Omega fanboy. I'm going to be reacting to pictures, an article on my phone about this watch, and give you my first impressions, because while I know that exists, I haven't really jumped too far deep into this particular watch. So this will be my first reaction right here with you, and we will discover this together. And also, I have a list of questions that many of you have been asking me on Instagram, The Real John P, as well as DelReyWatch.com. We get a lot of questions and comments from collectors like you, and I have them all here for you. And you can check DelReyWatch.com for a bunch of Omega watches, including a whole slew of watches we just got in from a recent kind of a big exchange we did with a very prominent collector from Asia. So I'm going to pull this right up on my phone. I'm just going to hide it here so you don't see my password, because I also use it for the ATM, right? So let me pull this up. Okay.
2 hours later.
Okay, so here we have it here. The Omega Speedmaster 321. Stainless steel. Okay. First impressions is I do like the way that it looks. I mean, it looks just exactly what it is. It looks like a modern rendering of the Omega Speedmaster Ed White. You can see it with the dot over 90, so you have the dot over the 90 on the tachometer bezel. Classic vintage Speedmaster. You have the vintage Speedmaster logo, which I really do enjoy a whole lot. You know, a lot of Speedmasters have the modern version of the Omega logo, but this has that classic, the kind of the wide top, as you see there, kind of that mushroom-esque logo that's there. You've got the lugs. Okay, you got the vintage inspired bracelet, like the classic moon watch. What else we have? We have the step dial. So the dial has layered, albeit not as pronounced as some of the vintage watches look, but this is a rendering, so that could possibly change. But they have the faux patina. Every modern recreation of vintage watches has to go for that faux patina. If only they could just come out with a way where the watch would develop its own patina, albeit while you owned it brand new. Some kind of chemical that they can, come on, modern chemistry, why can't they do that? So they have the faux patina. I think I can look past that. Let's get into a picture of the back. Okay, yeah, classic 321, gorgeous column wheel chronograph movement, a very solid quality movement. Okay, it says here that the 321 movement here is not the original Speedmaster 321. I think about maybe a year and a half ago, there was a lot of press surrounding the 321 with rumors Omega would be releasing it, and Omega actually dug up a bunch of old parts and put together some interesting watches, but this is certainly a recreation, a modern-day production of the 321, but the finishing is also much better. It looks, just look at the lines that they have here. The finishing is just much better than the original 321, and certainly any 321 that you would be buying from Chrono24 or any other vintage watch sources. Okay, so 39.7. Let's get into the specs here, because that's what it's all really about. So first impressions is I really like the way that it looks, but I'm kind of feeling that based on the webpage here, Omega really has this angled towards being more of a premium high-end watch. Now let's look at the specs and also get into the pricing and see what is up there. Okay, so it has 39.7 millimeters, so it's going to fit a lot like the first Omega in space, which is out there for honestly a few $1,000s. But the first Omega in space, so it's got that classic Speedmaster Ed White size, smaller than current gen Speedmaster Professional by roughly a little over 2 millimeters, but you never know how it wears on the wrist. 19 millimeter lug width, 50 meter water resistance, Zirconium Oxide bezel. I see what they're doing here. You have basically Omega's material that they use for the bezels on their ceramic Seamasters. Now they're going to be putting this on the Speedmaster. They're going after the Daytona, maybe. Okay, what else do we have? 55-hour power reserve. Okay, column wheel chronograph. Whew. 14,100 US dollars. I'm sorry, guys. I think that's where I slide the phone away on the table now. I don't see it at $14,100. But first impressions are, I like the way that it looks. The specs are okay. It has a sapphire display case back, so clearly Omega is pushing upmarket with this watch. They're making more of a luxury item, less away the sports and utility good value watches, and maybe they're making a play to get into that Daytona category. I mean, the pricing here, over $14,000, clearly a few $1,000s more expensive than the stainless steel ceramic Rolex Daytona, which I think is wild, but they are pushing it up market. You can see it in the case back pictures very clearly. The whole case back is pretty much able to be observed from the back. So obviously with that better finish movement than the original 321, this is the kind of market, the watch geek, watch collector, savant market Omega is trying to push into. Also saw some wording in their advertising online that, you know, this is the area they're going for, and that, you know, watch collectors are very excited about this classic iconic movement. So that's the market they're getting into. It doesn't say anything about this watch being limited edition or limited run, but obviously they'll probably only produce so many of these things because it is a high-end, high-price watch for the brand Omega, especially in stainless steel. So we'll have to see what they do with the watch when it comes to it. I'll answer a few questions, and then I'll wrap up with some more kind of my opinion. Having had many watches, Omega Speedmaster was one of my first luxury watches, a real limited edition from the Mission series. But let's answer some of your questions here based on the information I saw, as well as what I think on the industry and having held just so many Speedmasters. So the first question is, what do you think about the new stainless steel Omega 321? Okay, I think I covered it, but I think it's Omega's push and foray to get into that high-end sports watch segment. They have sports watches, they have the Speedmasters classic watches, and they've had some variations of pricier Speedmasters, but none that have really caught the attention of the die-hard watch collector, and that's where I see them pushing with this. There's limited information, but enough to really grab the attention of the watch collector, iconic classic movement, and that's something that I think Omega really needs to get into. But considering they're charging more than Rolex, I don't know. I'm a little bit shocked that they're charging more than the Daytona, but we'll see how it plays out in the real world. You know, maybe the watch collectors and geeks like us are willing to pay for that. I don't know. I'm thinking that maybe a year or two after they come out, you'll get a discount. Overall, I like the watch a whole lot. I think they probably should have a Hesalite version. It looks like it's a sapphire domed crystal, which is interesting. It'll look a lot like that Hesalite, the original, you know, plastic-based crystal, but it's sapphire, so they're really going in that luxury category. Overall, I think it looks like a pretty solid watch. Faux patina, what can you do? It's part of that area of watches today. Next question, will the Rolex Daytona lose to the 321? No, absolutely not. Guys, the people generally that buy the Rolex Daytona, at least from us and other dealers I know and work with, including authorized dealers, are generally the guys that just want a high-end watch. You know, you never really get a guy that says, you know, I want a Rolex Daytona current generation because I love the movements and I love the, you know, the angling on the case and I just love the curvature of the watch and the dial. Like, yeah, sure, you get those guys, but it's probably not the guy that's going to spend a whole ton at Rolex to get that Daytona from the list, spend a few $100K last year and the year prior to get the Daytona. I don't see that. And when you talk about paying double retail, us watch geeks and collectors generally have a whole short list of much better options for that price point with a lot more higher watch and horology value. So I don't think they're going to lose. I don't think that Rolex Daytona is going to lose to this watch by any stretch of the imagination. I think that this watch is just a different push in a same category, but a little bit different direction, more of a watch geeky collector alternative to a watch that you just can't get retail. Next question. Do you know the price of the new Omega 321? Yeah, it's going to be a little over 14.1 or 14.4, just depending, but it looks like in that range. Once again, that's probably where they need to price it. But at the same time, I don't think too many people are going to be willing to pay that. Hopefully you can go to an authorized dealer and bargain quite a large discount. And lastly, will I buy one? Guys, I don't think that I would be willing to pay $14.4 for this watch from a brand that's known for great value. I've got Rolex, I've got many other watches, Mosers and Girard-Perregaux and so on. And I go to the Omega when I want to wear a watch that has a good price point for what you get. And honestly, at a little over $14,000 more than the Rolex Daytona, which is arguably the hottest watch in existence right now, Omega is coming out with a watch that sure probably has a little bit better of a movement in terms of intricacy and having an icon and having something that you can look at as a watch collector, but it's just not going to be as in demand or even close to the Rolex Daytona, literally any of the Rolex Daytonas. So can I justify paying more than the retail price of the Daytona? Absolutely not. Now, if you can get these things pre-owned eventually, or you can get these things at maybe 30% discount, I mean, we're still talking a little over $9,000. For $9,000, you can just get so much value, and from a brand that's supposed to have a lot of value, I don't see it. Considering the original Ed Whites, which this watch is modeled after, can be bought sometimes for $14,000 in decent condition without bracelet, sometimes a little bit more, but in that range, guys, you can buy the original thing. Why am I going to buy a recreation with faux patina? That being said, I think the watch is very interesting. Give me the watch for $7,000, $6,000, where I think Omega generally prices their watches and where I think it probably should be. Because think about it, guys. Think about the Omega Speedmaster Professional 42mm current gen. We see them trading for between $35,000 to $4,000, but the retail is thousands above that. But people just think of it as a much lower price watch because of the value Omega brings. So do they probably need to move up market considering what's going on with luxury goods? Yeah, probably. Do I think watch geeks and collectors are going to be a little bit disappointed when they see the price tag and perhaps the ADs don't get a lot of these in and the boutiques are not willing to budge on price because they don't? Yeah, I think there's going to be some disappointment there. But what do you guys think about this watch? What are your first impressions? Are you excited for it? And what do you think about the price? Personally, and I think you've collected this already, I think from a brand like Omega, which I enjoy a whole lot, I'm an Omega fanboy, I think the price is a little bit ridiculous considering the current market out there and retail prices of other watches. I want to know what you have to say because I love talking with you in the comments below. Instagram, The Real John P, and DelReyWatch.com. Thanks, guys. You have been chatting with John P. Omega fanboy out.